She wasn't his wife by choice, but by the time he found the truth, it was already too late. The town didn't ask questions, and that was the first thing she noticed. People glanced at her, then quickly looked away, like eye contact itself was dangerous. The wind carried dust through the main street, and every step she took felt heavier than the last. She had arrived with nothing but a worn suitcase and a choice she never thought she'd make: marry a man she barely knew, or leave town before nightfall. In the frontier, survival wasn't about courage, it was about timing, and hers had run out. He stood beside her, tall, quiet, his hat pulled low enough to shadow his eyes. Folks called him reliable, solid, the kind of man who kept his word and didn't ask for explanations. That was why the deal was made so quickly. No romance, no promises, just protection, a roof, and a name that would keep her safe. She told herself it was temporary, just long enough to get back on her feet. But deep down, she knew better. In places like this, temporary choices had a way of becoming permanent. As they walked through town together, the silence between them felt louder than conversation. He didn't reach for her hand. She didn't look at him. That distance was unspoken agreement. This marriage wasn't about affection. It was about necessity. The townspeople watched from doorways and windows, not judging, just measuring. In this town, everyone measured everyone else. It was how they stayed alive. That night, lying awake under a Chuji unfamiliar roof, she realized the real cost of the deal. She wasn't just giving up her freedom. She was stepping into a life where secrets were currency, and asking questions could be dangerous. She told herself she'd made the right choice. After all, she was still breathing. And on the frontier, that counted for something. But as the wind rattled the windows and the town settled into uneasy silence, one thought refused to leave her mind. Survival might save your body, but it could cost you your heart. The wedding was quiet. No music, no celebration, just words spoken because they had to be. She stood beside him, feeling the weight of every second. When it was over, nothing changed. No kiss, no smiles. Just two people bound by an agreement neither of them fully understood yet. He treated her with respect, almost too much of it, like crossing an invisible line might shatter whatever balance they had. Days passed, then weeks. Life settled into routines, meals, chores, long evenings filled with silence. She learned his habits, how he always checked the doors twice, how he stared at the horizon a moment longer than necessary. He was kind in his own distant way, and that made the guilt harder when she noticed someone else. The other cowboy didn't belong to her world. He showed up one afternoon, leaning against a post outside the general store, easy smile, restless energy. He talked like someone who'd been places, seen things beyond the edges of the map. When their eyes met, something shifted. Not love, not yet. Recognition. Like two people who knew what it meant to be alone. She avoided him at first, then coincidence brought them together again. Short conversations, shared silences. Nothing improper, nothing anyone could accuse. But emotions don't need permission to grow. She laughed more around him, felt seen in ways she hadn't since arriving. And that scared her more than hunger ever had. At night, guilt pressed heavy on her chest. She hadn't promised love, but she hadn't planned on betrayal either. The frontier didn't forgive mistakes, especially quiet ones. And the more she tried to ignore her feelings, the stronger they became. She was falling for the one man she was never meant to notice. The town noticed before she did. They always did. Conversations stopped when she walked by. Doors closed faster. The frontier had a way of sensing disruption, and she was becoming one. Late one evening, standing under lantern light, she realized how fragile everything was. One wrong step, one careless glance, and the deal that saved her life could destroy it. The other cowboy knew the risk, too. That was what made his restraint hurt more. He kept his distance, spoke carefully, but the tension between them said everything words couldn't. Sometimes love wasn't about touch. It was about everything you refused to do. And still, the danger grew. Her husband remained silent, observant, too observant. She wondered if he already knew, or if he was waiting, watching, to see how far things would go. In the frontier, silence was never empty. It was loaded. One night, a truth surfaced she hadn't expected. This town didn't just survive on deals. It survived on erasing problems. People who didn't fit quietly disappeared, left town. Or so the stories went. And suddenly, her marriage wasn't just protection. It was a shield against becoming another name people stopped saying. Love had become a liability, and she had to decide which kind of loss she could live with. By morning, the decision was made. Not out loud, but in the way she packed her things slower than usual. In the way she avoided mirrors. In the way the air felt heavier than it had the day she arrived. Some truths don't explode. They sink in quietly and stay there forever. When he walked ahead of her across the open field, she understood what survival really meant. Not staying alive, but learning how to live with what you gave up. The frontier didn't reward honesty. It rewarded endurance. And sometimes that meant walking away from the one thing that made you feel human. As the sun rose, the town behind them faded into dust and memory. No one would ever know the full story. And that was the point. On the frontier, secrets weren't mistakes. They were the price of staying alive.